How are you guys? Our guest is logging in right now. I promise you it's going to be a joy. I do apologize for the name at the bottom of the school. This is not Astrid. This is Raphael Baker, and he's going to be talking to us about insurance and, how insurance really run our lives. It even runs our day. So we're going to have a great conversation tonight. Stay tuned. We're planning big things for you. We'll soon be televised as well as YouTube, and we're going to radio. So after the introduction, we'll be back with Raphael Baker. Welcome to A Moment with Vivacious, a freedom ride where we the people gather to build ourselves, our family, our community, and our nation. For the sound of America for Progress has reached critical mass. Understanding that we must put aside our differences to focus on the greater good. This is a place of collaboration to rebuild and restore our nation. Welcome to A Moment with Vivacious. Hello. And tonight is a very important night in our life. We are so excited to have you here tonight. I want y'all to know, I want the world to know that you are an outstanding person to me.
Thank you.
I just listen to you. I follow you. It's so smart. Like I wanted to know a whole bunch of things. He said, well, my specialty is really insurance. But you know what? Raphael, insurance runs our lives.
Yes.
It even runs our death. And it's demanded in every area of our life. Life insurance, home insurance, insurance. Insurance on your mom, and not the dogs even have insurance.
Right.
But very few of us understand insurance, even know where to begin to think. You can think, oh, my family's covered. I have this insurance policy. And a family member of mine, she paid insurance for years and years. She died almost 100 years old and didn't have enough money for her funeral.
So sad.
I sat in a person that I know met up with somebody. They were diagnosed with a certain kind of cancer. Okay, both had the same diagnosis. One had Medicare, was trying to get Medicaid, and was trying to get Medicare. And the other one, he had great insurance. Needless to say, you're gonna get what you pay for. It's a business now.
Yes.
The one without insurance, the one with little insurance, ended up dying. Well, we don't have any more studies for you. Sorry, we gotta let you die. And with hardly any compassion. And a man with good insurance was well healed from cancer and came to his funeral.
Wow.
And I see it so much in the hospital now. I don't know where to begin, but this is your area of expertise. Please let these people leave knowing a little bit about the very power that run their lives.
Okay, so first of all, let me say thank you so much for having me on your platform. You are truly vivacious, and I'm really honored to be here and to speak with you and with your guests. So I really just had to get that out the way. You really are vivacious.
Thank
Yes.
you. Tell us a little bit about you. So they'll be as in love with you as I am.
Okay, thank you so much. So, a little background. I'm from Philadelphia. I was born and raised in Philly. I spent about 6 years in North Carolina, where I ended up getting into the insurance industry. I'm in North Carolina, I had been originally in the nonprofit sector as a program manager, and I was looking for a job. And I could not find anything. So I had a telemarketing job that I absolutely hated. So I took my resume to a temp agency in the building. I said, get me a job anywhere. I have to get out of here. And so she said, well, we have an insurance agency that's hiring for a front desk receptionist. I said, set up the interview. She said, well, he's a little disagreeable. I said, set up the interview. Long story short, he hired me. He was amazing. He was my mentor. He ended up mentoring me. I started teaching myself while I was answering phones and taking payments, teaching myself terminology. I started teaching myself a lot about policies, really educating myself. So he sent me to school. He sent me to insurance school, and I moved from that front desk into an office of my own. I worked for several agencies for years, and then finally, it is time for my own. So 2011, I opened up my own agency, had it for 6 years. And then I said, okay, let me go to the corporate side of insurance. So I spent about 7 years at AAA in corporate leadership. So I really rounded my insurance experience. And now I am back to being an entrepreneur. I have an independent agency that I restarted a couple years ago. So I'm back offering the citizens of Georgia my amazing services. But I've been in the insurance industry for a little over 20 years. Additionally, in 2022, I ran for insurance commissioner for the state of Georgia. That was an amazing experience. I was the only one in the race who didn't have political experience. I beat the party favorite by a little over 100,000 votes and forced a runoff. We didn't take the victory in the runoff, but I will say the people of Georgia still won because I was able to shine a light on a lot of the issues that are impacting our citizens that they don't even know about. A little bit more about me. I was a membership chair for the North Fulton Democrats for a while, and I'm currently the Freedom Fund chair for Atlanta NAACP.
All right. I want to know a little bit more about that too.
Yes.
But so where do we start with? Where do we start with insurance? You buy house insurance, and then something happens, and you find out, oh, that wasn't covered. I mean, you're like, what could? But it's a very profitable, maybe the most profitable business in America. Help us with that.
Okay, so insurance is one of those businesses that is pretty much recession proof because insurance is a product that people have to have. If you have a mortgage on your home, you're required to have homeowners insurance. If you're financing your car, you have to have car insurance. And in the state of Georgia, you are required to maintain at least liability insurance when you put your car on the road. Even apartment complexes now are requiring renters insurance for the residents there. So it's something that you have to have. But a lot of people, a lot of consumers have no idea what they're buying. And they don't realize that they're not adequately covered until they actually have a loss. So some ways to help mitigate that, I would say, A, get yourself an amazing agent. First and foremost, like when you are ill, you go to a doctor. These insurance agents are licensed professionals, just like your lawyers, just like your doctors. You don't really want to diagnose yourself on Google. So you don't really want to diagnose your needs on Google or what you think you know. So get you a good agent that's not looking for just commission, but somebody that cares about educating you. Pull out your policy. I would go line by line with my insurance agent, and you find out, hey, what does this cover? What does this cover? What does this mean? Learn the terminology. There's so much terminology floating around, but there's some basic things that you should learn. Like, for example, if you have a car insurance policy, you need to know what your comprehensive coverage is. Real quick, your comprehensive coverage it covers things such as fallen objects. So a rock hits your windshield. broken glass, theft, vandalism, somebody keys your car because you got into a bad relationship, like that Jasmine Sullivan song where she burst the windows out the car. I mean, really, your homeowner's insurance, you want to think about things like, the actual structure of the home, your personal belongings, they're covered. There are a lot of different items. There's even something called liability that is built into homeowners insurance and auto insurance and business policies and most policies. And what that is, we live in a very litigious society. People are going to sue you. So if you cause property damage, bodily injury to somebody else, you have that policy in place, which is going to help mitigate some of those expenses. If you don't have that coverage, or if you don't have enough coverage, guess what? They are suing you and coming for your assets. And we work so hard. So I like to tell people, cover your assets.
Yes.
Yes.
So I want to go to the fires in California.
Yes.
These people had all of this insurance on their houses, and they still had no insurance coverage. And like the people in Florida, their houses flooded, but they didn't have the right flood insurance.
Right. Yes. So in California, that was definitely something that was very traumatic. And, I saw a lot of things on social media where a lot of people were saying that the companies dropped them. And so they didn't have coverage in the midst of, the fires. Well, I will say that I've researched a lot of the codes in California law. So a lot of what we saw online, it wasn't necessarily true. There was some information. So insurance companies can't just drop you and say you don't have coverage anymore. There's a certain time period and there are certain notice requirements that they have to send. A lot of insurance companies have pulled out of California and Florida because of the amounts of natural disasters that they're having. And so a lot of the companies, remember, they are companies, so they want to be profitable. So a lot of the companies are just saying, hey, we can't afford to do business there anymore. Now, when they do that, though, they still have to give ample notice. Usually a lot of places, it'll be at least 90 days. And it's an opportunity for you to secure coverage elsewhere. Also, there's some codes in California law which state that when there are catastrophes like those fires, insurance companies have to put a moratorium. They have to halt, they have to pause, they have to cease those non-renewals for a little while. So California is one of those states that, although they are having these disasters, although some people aren't going to be able to rebuild because they didn't have coverage, California is one of those good states where their insurance commissioner is doing his job. I can say that Florida is a different story. Florida, we know, is terrible when it comes to insurance, as well as education, as well as politics and everything. So Florida is a different story. But as far as California, the government that's in place right now, they're doing a lot to help and to protect its citizens.
And I have a large Louisiana following.
Yes.
And the insurance, flood insurance in my city is like people can't afford it. It's almost like we putting you out of your house,
Right.
because we're not going to cover you. You're going to pay an arm and a leg. A lot of people who own their homes is on limited income. They're on a set income. So they try to go get help to fix their home because they have to bring it up to a certain standard for the insurance companies. Is like way out of, man, you know how much those people made when they bought that insurance? So, and now you're requiring them to spend all this money to fix the house. Now they're going to lose their house in 2 ways. They still can't afford the insurance,
Right.
and they can't afford the loans that the people they're being robbed 2 ways almost.
Right.
That might be unfair, but that's how I feel. These people are being robbed in 2 ways. I can't afford the insurance. I got to fix the house. I make a loan. Now I can't afford the loan. I can't afford the house payment now, and I can't afford the insurance. And this is people who's been living in houses. My friend is old as me.
Right.
Living in houses, and now I've paid for my house all these years, and now I can't afford it. What's going on here?
Okay, so one thing I would like to say, in a lot of these situations is by design. Is by design. And so that's why it is important to push back. It is important to fight back. It is important to get involved. I always hear a lot of people say, I don't want to get involved in politics. But even if you don't want to get involved in politics, politics governs your everyday life. And so we have to get elected officials in these positions in the Senate, in the House. And I'm talking about local government first, people that truly have the best interest of the people at heart, and I'm not even talking about parties because I always believe people over party. We need to elect these officials that really care, these people that you see in the neighborhoods, not just when it's campaign season. These people that are listening, not just because there's a camera or a microphone in front of them, and really get involved, get these people elected, but then once they're elected, hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. And then other civic organizations, these other organizations like the NAACP, get involved with these organizations, even if you feel that they're not doing a lot. Hey, there's power in numbers. Go get involved, make your voices heard, because people they're losing their houses. Hey, a lot of that is happening in Georgia, where the insurance is more expensive than car payments. People are having to choose whether or not they're going to eat or they're going to pay for their health insurance. We have some of the highest rates in insurance even here in Georgia. Yes. Even here in Georgia. And that's one of the reasons I decided to throw my hat into the ring in 2022, because I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it as someone who has been in the industry for over 20 years, but I've also seen it because, I had some personal situations with people. I had one of my best friends, my best friend in the world, ended up passing away from kidney failure. But while he was suffering from kidney failure, I spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital advocating for him, pushing back on these doctors, pushing back on the healthcare system. We really need to restore care into healthcare. We need more people that are going to advocate for the people, because people are suffering.
And look, I work it every day. They are putting people on the sidewalk, literally out of the hospital when their days are up. I remember in days in my town, the government hospital was Charity. And I worked at Charity for almost 10 years. And what they would do is, if a person was not well, if a person was still very ill, and their days ran up, they would bring them to the emergency room, discharge them, bring them to the emergency room, and readmit them after 24 hours. But they would not send those people home. How possible is it? Now I'm way going off, okay? But this is a big deal to me, and I say it often, Raphael. How hard would it be to restore state-owned hospital? Like here in Georgia, the Grady system, I have insurance, but I signed up for Grady because when I go to Grady, I know I'm assigned to a physician. When I go to clinics in Georgia or private offices, you only see a nurse practitioner. I watch these people sit down and share notes and cheat and then go past the test. I walk in there, I'm telling you, because I'm a nurse for so long, the last time I went to a practitioner. I told her what was going on with me and what to order for me. But I'm paying, but my insurance pay. No, what are we gonna do for this? It's like it's failing. It's the health system, and I don't want to monopolize this, but that's where my heart is. But the health system in America
Right.
is failing people.
It's failing. And we are going to need a dramatic overhaul. We need a dramatic overhaul because right now they are prioritizing profits over people. And again, getting these right people in place that really care, that really care. Like, we have to find ways also to help mitigate these astronomical costs. You know, I had hip surgery in December, and when I got that bill, just for, you know, you get a small X-ray, is $1,200. You get this, you get that. It was over $100,000 just for a surgery. You know, thank God I had insurance, but these costs, they're just astronomical. So we have to start putting some caps on these costs. You know, there's a lot of people that have advocated for, you know, like the universal health care and things like that. You know, that's an option that comes with its downsides as well, because when you kind of add all that bureaucracy, then you're going to have longer wait times. You're going to have a harder time getting to the physician that you want to. You know, I've talked to some folks in the industry, like in Canada, you know, and other places where they have that healthcare and is not without its issues. So what is really going to take is a meeting of the minds of people that care, of people that care. It is not going to be an easy fix dismantling something that has taken so long to build. So we really have to dismantle this thing brick by brick.
Right? It's such big business here
Yeah.
here in Atlanta, here in Georgia. Piedmont Emory. Everybody else is the underdog.
Right.
Piedmont Emory, and it's big business. Look, they didn't like me at a certain job when I worked for a certain big insurance. It's national, but it's not one of the main ones here. 20 minutes for the patient. Some patients didn't take 20 minutes. But there was a gentleman that was sick. He kept coming back sick. They said, what is wrong with him? So I had a compassionate doctor. And I said, Doc, could you please spend some time with this man?
Right.
She said, if you're willing to give up your lunch, I'll be willing to give up my lunch. But we couldn't tell anybody. I said, okay, I want to give up my lunch. So during lunch, I told the man to just sit here. I had the man sitting here. He was sick. They did the test months ago. She went through the chart, found out the man had cancer, and had to get him into the oncologist that day through an emergency. But to get him to the oncologist that day wasn't because, oh my God, we missed this man had surgery. Oh my God, we're going to be sued that we missed this.
Right.
That I just cried. But I thank God that she cared to look.
Right.
You know, I didn't work for them long after that. But I'm a struggler. But the health system, when it was the state system, like here it was Grady. Everybody who got sick, anybody on the street that got sick could go there and get optimal care.
Right.
You knew you were getting well again. So I am a strong believer in, can we get back to state health care? Because the state is dominating the money.
Right. Right. And then, you know, we need a new governor. So, you know, I mean, really, you know, it starts from the top. So all of our candidates that are running for governor, this is something that we really need to press. This is something that's really important. And I would like to dig a little deeper into the numbers and kind of do an analysis on when, you know, it was state run versus now with all the privatization or whatever, you know, so we could really present a strong case, because I had never even thought of it like that. And so we're onto something, and we really let's work together, get that research,
Yes, yeah,
and that's
I am
something else that
so
we
I'm
can
so
fight
real
for.
about that.
Yeah, that's
Um,
something else we can fight for.
yeah, can you give us a little more? I'll get all into that medical thing. Can you, like, we have insurance? I'm gonna tell you one thing. I'm realizing sitting here that I'm very guilty of. I had a deep discussion when I years ago when I negotiated my car insurance. I left somebody because I was mad. How you gonna do that? How you gonna double my prices overnight? So
Right.
I went and negotiated good coverage with someone else. But I've been paying it for years, yet the policy renews every 6 months. I never went back to check it. Do that policy change from what we originally negotiated? And I'm gonna do it tonight. I'm gonna go back and read my policy because I haven't read it, and a lot of us do that with all of our insurance.
Right.
Can you
Right.
give us like instructions on
Yes.
when we're purchasing insurance
Yes. So
and the
when
questions we should ask?
yes, definitely. So first of all, before you decide to go with an insurance company, I would say do a little research on the company. Find out what the company's rating is. Find out how well and how quickly a company pays claims. You can also find out how solvent a company is. So you don't want to, excuse me, go to a carrier that is going to end up going bankrupt within a year or so. But I would say every piece of mail that you get from an insurance company, open it. Open it. Because part of our responsibility as the people who are insured, we're supposed to stay abreast of what's going on. So, your policies, a lot of auto policies renew every 6 months. So I would say about 90 days, like maybe set a calendar alert before your renewal. Keep checking the mail for your renewal documents or reach out to your agent or company and say, hey, let's go ahead and do a policy review. I highly recommend before every renewal, you do a policy review with your agent. That way you can tell, A, the price is likely going to go up because we're living in Georgia. Find out, what the new premium is going to be, what, if anything, changed as far as coverages are concerned. You talk about the situations in your life which might have changed. So let's say you had a son in your house that was on your car insurance. He's no longer in your household. He has his own car. He has his own life. He's living in another state, but he's still on your policy and you're being rated for him. So you always want to discuss any changes in your family or your living situation. If you may be retired, you're not commuting back and forth to work anymore. A lot of policies will rate you on your mileage and how often you drive back and forth, how often you commute to work. So let them know, hey, or I'm working from home now. So I'm driving my car less. So you're less risky. If you're on the road less, the insurance company sees you as a smaller risk. And a lot of times you're not going to pay as much. So every single renewal, I highly encourage you to have a policy review done with your agent. Sometimes people might get their coverage online and they might not have an agent, but call that 800 number and speak with one of the representatives and have them do a review. Or if you have a friend like me that is an industry professional, hey, call me and say, I don't understand what's going on. My agent's not getting back to me. And I'll go over it with you. And there's so many other people that are like me because we do it because we want to make sure that our people are educated. Our people are educated. So review, review, review. That's highly important. And if your policy is going up some crazy amount, there's ways to bring that down. Inquire about the new discounts that you might be eligible for that you weren't necessarily eligible for when you first got the policy. Another thing that I noticed, sometimes people will have some older cars, little cars from like 1912, but they have full coverage on that car. You really don't need full coverage on that car because if you get into an accident and your car is totaled, you're not really getting anything back. So you're wasting that money every month paying for a coverage you don't necessarily need. And so during that policy review, you can discover which coverages you don't need anymore. That's very important. So you might find out you might need some new coverages, but you also might find out you don't need those coverages. With car insurance, there's other ways to bring your rates down. A lot of these companies have things that they call telematics. And that's where you either get an app on your phone or you plug something into your car and they kind of gauge your driving habits. And they'll give you a nice little discount when you first get the policy. And usually on every renewal, if you have safe driving habits, you continue to get those discounts. And so what that does, is a couple things. It lets the insurance company know, hey, this person is safe. But then you as the driver, it makes you more aware of the way you're driving. So if you're a safer driver, guess what? You can help minimize your chances to get in an accident or to have these claims. So the companies, they definitely want to incentivize you to do that. So that's another way you can go ahead and kind of bring your rates down.
And another thing that if I want to go to renter's insurance.
Yes.
A lot of places will require you to have insurance on their building.
Yes.
And if that's the main point, if they say you have to have $80,000, I'm making this up, $80,000 worth of insurance on their building, what part of, what about your belongings?
Right.
Do they get the money that you have to pay for the insurance on their building? And what covers that? I mean, you're like, is it something you do to the building or if just anything happens to the building?
Okay. Great question, Ms. Vivacious. And this is very important because, every day or every month on the news, we hear about people being displaced from apartments because of, fires and things like that. So the part that these complexes and a lot of these landlords require is called liability. So remember a little earlier, we talked about that liability. So let's say you're a renter, you're cooking dinner, you go to sleep and you burn down your apartment. That liability is going to kick in. And that liability portion of your policy is going to cover that up to whatever that limit is. A lot of the landlords and properties are requiring at least $100,000 for that. Now, the portion in your renter's policy that protects you and your belongings, that's the personal property. The personal property, that's all of your belongings. And one of the things that I've seen, the renters, the landlords, they don't care if you only have like 10,000 in your personal property, as long as you have that 100,000 in liability. So in order to really take an assessment of your belongings, I've seen people say, oh, I only have $10,000 worth of stuff. Then we start talking about the TVs. We start talking about those clothes. We start really going into it. We have $50,000 right there, so you really want to make sure that if you're living in an apartment, you're living in a condo, you're renting from other people, you truly protect yourself. You live with people, you can't control whether or not somebody else is going to burn down that apartment next door to you. So you want to make sure that you have that coverage. So that personal property coverage is what you want to look for that's going to protect you. There's another coverage in these renters insurance policies that is a really great coverage as well. And it's called loss of use. And what loss of use is, if your place of residence becomes unlivable because of a claim, the insurance company will give you a certain amount of money to, get a hotel. Sometimes you can get an Airbnb depending on how long it's going to take to repair your place. It really helps. So you're not just homeless while your place is getting repaired. You see a lot of people with these GoFundMe accounts because their apartment burned down. Well, if you have a good insurance policy and you make sure you have that loss of use coverage, which is usually included in all renters insurance policies, you'll be fine.
I'm so sorry. Explain to me the loss of use, because I'm thinking of the apartment building where the people went upstairs and had fireworks and the whole place burned down and everybody in the building.
Mm-hmm.
Would my liability have to pay for my apartment, since do I have to make a claim because they set the building on fire?
Right. So your liability wouldn't have to cover that, and then they were involved in a criminal act. So like that liability is going to go out the window. Now that apartment complexes policy is going to have to kick in and really cover the repair of the building. Your policy as a resident is going to help you cover, your belongings that were burned up, and also lodging until you find another place. So yeah, the building you won't be liable for. You didn't set the fire. You're good to go on that. Your liability won't be touched on your policy, but all of your personal property and that loss of use, that will really protect you during a time like that. And that was horrible. Like that was really horrible.
I know, and it was around a holiday or something. And I know because I had art and jewelry, so I asked about that ahead of time. So I just want to say, if you have something that's not included in like everyday furniture.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'm glad you brought that up because we like nice things. I can tell you have some fabulous things. So they have add-ons to your policies that you can get, and sometimes you can even get a separate policy. So they're called two things. They're called inland marine policies, or they're called personal articles floaters. Most property policies that you have, whether it's a homeowner's policy, a condo policy, or renter's insurance policy, has certain limits on things like jewelry. If you have fine art, if you have a whole lot of furs, you got that beautiful engagement ring or that wedding ring. So you get that inland marine policy or that personal articles floater. And usually with those, they require that, you send in or upload like an appraisal for those things. And then that way, guess what? If those things get stolen, if those things get lost, sometimes even if they get damaged, usually anywhere in the world, you have that coverage. So if you have those fancy extras, you definitely want to invest in those policies, and they're usually not that expensive. But a lot of people don't know that. So they think, hey, my policy is automatically going to cover this. So yes, policies have limits. So when you are doing your review of your policy, talk to your agent about all of the things you have so they can recommend the best coverages for you. One thing that's not included in policies, the limits, over the limits for those things. Flood insurance is never included in your property policy. And in most cases, earthquake insurance isn't either. We're not really in earthquake zone, so we don't have to worry that much about that. But we do happen to get floods and things down here. So your policy does not cover flood. It does not cover flood, and it won't cover over a certain limit for your expensive items.
So the things that we're talking about now, for homeowners, is it the same? Should it be the same outlook of the things? Should they be looking out for the same things?
Yes. Yes, you definitely want to look out for the same things. But one of the things that's different when it comes to the homeowner's policy is you actually own that structure too. So you have that extra layer of protection that you're going to need. That's included in the homeowner's policies. So, you know how we talked about those renewals where you want to talk to your agent about changes? You know, a lot of times people will do renovations on their homes. So if you're doing renovations, you're adding another wing or you're adding a fancy bathroom or you're upgrading your countertops. You want to make sure that's reflected in your policy. So if God forbid your house burns down, they'll be able to rebuild it back to the standard of what it was. So there's this one word that kind of encapsulates what insurance is all about, and it's called indemnification. And what that is getting you back to the place that you were before you had a loss. So it's not going to make you better, but it's going to put you back. It is really designed to make you whole. And so in order to be made whole, there are certain things, you know, you have to do. Notify the company. Okay, yeah. When I bought the house, it was run down, you know, it was only worth $20,000, but we've renovated, we've put all of this into it, and now we're going to need more coverage just in case we have that loss. So it's really a relationship. You want to make sure that you have a relationship with your insurance professional. And if you don't have a relationship, and if you don't feel like you can build a relationship, I highly encourage you to find one that you can have that relationship with. Because my clients, they're like my family members. You know, we call, we talk. I give it to them real. I give it to them raw. You know, I had a client that continually had accidents, and he said, "Well, what can I do to bring my rates down?" I said, "Well, I'm going to send you an Uber referral code because I encourage you to take Uber."
Oh, yeah. You don't need to be on the road too.
No, you don't need to
So
drive.
I'm thinking of all the years we paid all of this insurance, right? We mentioned it, the dog ham insurance, you have car insurance, you have auto insurance, you have to have accidental death insurance. And a lot of people think they have insurance and they die from something else. And they say, well, he had insurance, but I had an accidental death insurance. So then they really don't have any life insurance.
Right.
And but we pay for years. It dominates everything.
It does.
So and making so much money. Some of us have had car insurance for years and years. I haven't had an accident in forever.
Right.
Is there a way we can make money off of our insurance with the insurance? Is there any way we can make money with that?
So one of the ways that you can make money, a lot of these permanent life insurance policies build cash value. And so if
What is a
you
permanent life?
a permanent, okay,
Because
so there's pretty much two different types of life insurance policies. There's a term policy, and then there's a whole life policy. Those are the two main types. So a term policy is a temporary policy. Let's say you get a policy for 10, 15, or 30 years, and then it expires and you don't have coverage. Or you get a permanent policy, which is pretty much going to last until you expire. Term policies, you're not going to earn money off of those, you know, but those are good because a lot of times you can get a lot more coverage for less money. And so think about things like mortgage protection. Like when you hear a mortgage protection policy, this is usually a term policy. So let's say you have a home that you bought for $300,000. You get a 30-year term because you have that 30-year mortgage. That way, if anything happens to you, your family, if you have them as the beneficiaries, they can go ahead and take that money and pay off that house. You know, so term policies have their benefits, but these permanent policies, you know, there's so many different types of permanent policies, but they build cash value. And with that cash value, while you're alive, you can borrow against that if you need it. So let's say you have an unexpected expense, or you have a child that's going to college, or you need a down payment on your house. You know, if you had that policy forever and ever and ever, talk to your agent and check that cash value of that policy. A lot of policies are also designed with something called like living benefits. So if you get like a terminal illness, you can go ahead and tap into some of that death benefit while you're alive, because we know that those terminal illnesses are so expensive. And if you're fighting for your life, you really don't have time to be thinking about finances. So it's a lot of little ways that you can get money and be smart. And another thing that's outside of insurance that people in the community, especially the Black community, we need to get a little more astute in is like investing. That's not really part of my ministry, but I have friends that are over on that financial services side, you know, the wealth advisors, and they can really teach you how to make your money grow, how to make your money grow. And, you know, if you look at people like Mitt Romney when he ran for president, you know, they had to show those tax returns. He paid less taxes than a lot of us did. But that's because a lot of his income came from his investments and it was taxed a lot lower. So we definitely have to get better, you know, with investing in these financial strategies, you know, have these people really teach us how to manage our money. And instead of always just working for our money, have our money work for us.
That's what we need to learn. We gotta have a better relationship with money. We
Yes.
must have a better relationship with money. And see, even your house have life insurance. If you die,
Yeah.
it's paid for. Even your house have life. Everything has insurance. Everything.
It's everywhere. I'm telling you, like, is everywhere. So I love the industry, you know, because I've learned so much and I've been able to, you know, contribute so much and I've received so much. But it's also an industry that needs to change because especially in Georgia is very predatory. Is very predatory. And we have to work on that. Like these insurance companies, unfortunately, have a rubber stamp and they are raising rates without any pushback at all. But we can blame, you know, our current administration. We can
Mhm.
blame our senators. We can blame all of our elected officials that really can change this, but a lot of them don't really care. And I don't think we're making enough noise. So I'm definitely
Right.
willing to
We
make
have
some
to
more.
take some responsibility.
Yeah, we got to
We
make some noise.
allow these things to happen and then we sit back and
Yeah,
say, oh, look what they're doing. But that's why we have this program, because we want
yeah,
people to learn. And one more thing I want to talk about, I know we're getting low on time, but I want to talk about people who think they can't afford insurance.
right.
Recently in the news, we've seen children that's been shot accidentally and died. A lot of people think this is children, we don't need insurance. But
Right.
these young people are, I don't know what's going on in the spirit, but a lot of young people are dying. And we just have young boys killing each other. It doesn't mean if your son is not in the game, he's not going to get killed. I'll never forget Malcolm X. Scott. That little boy mama had moved him to a neighborhood that she thought was good, and he went to the old neighborhood to go to the festival at Piedmont Park, and they caught the bus back. When he got off the bus at Goppy Road, somebody killed him right there. And forever he'll be on my heart, you know,
Right.
and I'll pray for that mama forever. But we have mamas. Look, a very good close friend of mine, her son and his friend was playing with the gun. The gun went off. A good boy,
Mhm.
a good boy. So you know, like we need to. But where do that mama? How could she afford? How could she work insurance in her life? And a lot of people fear. My little cousin, who has children, I'm saying my little cousin because he's
Right.
younger. He
Mhm.
has daughters, and his mom said, and my godson too. Mom said, "Let me get some life insurance on you." Godson was living too cool, okay? Let me
Right.
get some. No, you're trying to kill me off. They have that
Right.
stigma of you trying to kill me off
Right.
buying insurance. Can we talk about that for a little while for the people that don't have the money or
Yes.
think they don't have the money?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I definitely want to let you know, that's the perfect time to buy life insurance when they're young, because insurance is the least expensive when you're the youngest. Because usually when you're young, you're healthier, and those rates are less than that Starbucks coffee that you're getting. So a lot of people say they can't afford it, but when you look at your expenses and you look at that Netflix and you look at what you're spending on going to the club or getting that bottle of wine, it's a small investment. And a lot of people don't want to think about mortality. We don't want to think about our kids dying or this and that, but let's think about our kids living. This money is still going to help them as they live. If you go ahead and lock a policy in while they're young, they can have this policy for the rest of their lives, and that premium will never increase if you get a permanent policy. So let's say you're paying $15 a month for your child. Your child can go ahead and take over that policy once they become an adult. They're still going to be paying $15. And remember, they build cash value. So if this kid decides to go to college, hey, I need some money for college. Let me borrow some from my life insurance policy. I want to get a car. Guess what? Let me tap into my life insurance policy. So, death is scary. A lot of us, even though it's something that's going to happen, a lot of us don't want to think about that. But let's think about them actually living and just go ahead and do that. Like, we can find the money for things that we want. Now, of course, there's some people that won't be able to afford it. And I'm not talking about them, but I'm saying let's take a hard look in the mirror and look at the things that we are spending our money on, and just go ahead and just reach out, get some quotes from some of these people. And if you have grandkids, if the mama doesn't want to do it, guess what? Grandma can. They have policies where grandma can go ahead and get the policy for the grandkids just to help lock something in for them. Because one of the reasons that I really got into insurance, other than the fact that I fell into it, is because I kept seeing these GoFundMe funerals. Have you seen those, like, on Facebook?
That's their life insurance. That's the life insurance now for
Yeah,
parents too, especially if you have kids.
yes.
Anything happen to you, who's gonna take care of those kids?
Listen, I had a situation where I had a friend in school with. We went to school. We were friends since like 7th grade. And, I got into the industry and I was telling her, like, hey, let's talk about life insurance. She was like, oh, yeah, give me quotes, give me some quotes. She had a young daughter, but her son was like really young. And we kept talking about it. Finally, one day she called me. She said, I want to go ahead and get this life insurance policy on myself. I said, so what changed your mind? Is anything wrong? And she's like, no, I just want to get it. So I got the policy. We got the policy, written and everything. Then I found out she had skin cancer. And my friend, my close friend, since we were young, she passed away. And she had just gotten that policy. And because she had gotten that policy after she was diagnosed with cancer and she didn't disclose that on the policy, they denied her claim. And she had a daughter that was about to go to college and a little son. And when I tell you that hurt me to my core, because I'm like, this is my friend. This was my sister. And her kids, they were out there struggling because of that. So I really take it seriously. I take my career seriously. That's why, I take a platform like yours where, I can get on, share some of my story, but let you know how important it is. It's just really important, because what does the Bible say? No man knows the day or hour when he's going to appear, but we don't know the day or the hour when it's going to be our time. And so, because of that, let's start being a little more proactive as people. You know, a lot of times we're reactive. We wait till something happens. We wait till we get that diagnosis. But they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I just say, you know, I love y'all, but let's do better.
I want to talk about this too, because some insurance policies have savings with them. So sometimes a single mom can have life insurance on her and her kids, and it also have a savings account. How feasible is that for a mom who's making 15, 10, $15 an hour?
Yeah.
Or
So
dad?
in a situation like that, where you have, you know, that mom that's making that $15 or so an hour, I would say in a situation like that, it would be more important for the mom to get coverage on herself, you know, and then as her job prospects, everything is better, her life improves, then go ahead and, you know, think about the kids. But, you know, if you're a single mom, you're responsible for those kids' income, those kids' uniforms and everything. And if something happens to you, your kids are going to be in somebody's house and they're going to be mean to them because guess what? They have to go ahead and pay for them. So if in a situation like that, I would highly advise that mom to go ahead and just get something on herself. And as her situation improves, then go ahead and think about, you know, doing something for the children as well.
And how easy is it to get a policy with savings?
It's, you know, it's not too hard, but you know, every different company has different requirements, and so a lot of the policies you're going to have to answer, you know, some questions. They'll ask you questions about your background, ask if you do things like skydiving, race car driving, to make sure you're not too risky. But you know, health issues that you might have, you know, the high blood pressure that's really prevalent in our community, diabetes, and things like that. But every company has its own set of requirements. But the younger and the healthier you are, the easier it is to go ahead and get something like that. Now, if you aren't necessarily young and or healthy, there's policies that are available too. And these policies, some people call them final expense policies, burial policies, but what they are guaranteed issue policies. So those are policies that don't really take your health history into consideration. Now, there's usually a waiting period of like 2 years for you to be able to get that full death benefit, like if you pass away, but you can still get coverage up until a certain age. Now, if you're 150 and God has blessed you to live to be that old, nobody's going to insure you, but you're just blessed because you're still here. But
But I have on my insurance, my agent spoke to me and encouraged me to get long-term insurance because I had property and those things that could take care of me. Could you
Mhm.
tell us about that? Because a lot of people don't know it exists. I didn't know it existed until she told me about
Yes, these long term care policies. So, with some life insurance policies, you can add that long term care benefit on there. And some people will buy separate long term care policies. And what these things do, you know, they pay for, you know, if you need to go to a nursing home or one of those active senior facilities, because, you know, that's expensive too. You know, a lot of people are telling me that they can't get old, and that's true. And so that's something that you want to consider, you know, especially even if you're in your 30s or 40s. You know, when you're thinking about your retirement, a lot of people just think about those 401ks, but also consider that long-term care benefit.
it. And so sometimes, like, I don't have to go in a home. If I went to live at my sister's home, they would give me so much money a month to
Mhm.
have somebody come and take care of us.
Yes, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, we have to We have to think of these things because getting old is not like it used to be.
Right. Right.
And getting older
Yeah,
and getting
or
older.
listen.
When they had, when people were having 5 and 6 children, it was okay to get old. They could divide that time up to take care of you. But
Right.
now you have one or none. So, you have to
Yeah,
have a way to take care of yourself.
that's right. And even sometimes when you have that one, they're on the other side of the world, and they're like, "Okay, I'm not taking care of you." So yeah, it's rough out here. It's rough out here.
Yeah, I have a daughter who has some issues of her own, and
Mhm.
my granddaughter, her daughter said, "Nana, you will never go in the home." I said, "It's okay to put me in a home,
Right.
but make sure it's a good home. Make sure you come and visit often. That they don't know when you gonna show up, so
Right.
they'll be treat me right. Make sure I have my lipstick and my wigs. I want my eyelashes on, and I don't want no old lady clothes. Wear my own clothes in the nursing home. I always tease them. With
Oh
my
my
own
goodness.
clothes, I don't want to wear no old lady clothes. Don't buy me none of those old lady clothes.
You're gonna stay fly and vivacious.
That's right. That's right. Bring me my clothes, my lipstick, my wig, my eyelashes.
You know what? I love that. I love that. You can be the most fabulous lady in there.
Yeah, with all the stories, with all the stories, with all the
Mhm.
stories. We are so glad. Now, if you could just recap for us the important things that people should know and remember, and how they can become. We saying contact your representatives, but a whole lot of people. You don't have to go into the history. We had a civics lesson, but how do you get involved? Like, who do you call to get involved and to make things better for you, and why it's important, but things that you think is absolutely that we should know and remember and not forget. Barbara said, absolutely awesome infinity for our conversation. Thank you,
Thank
Barbara.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so when we talk about getting involved, so first of all, the Department of Insurance. Department of Insurance is supposed to be, a good resource for all things insurance, and you should be able to kind of stay abreast on things like the rate increases and everything. But whoever your senator is, state senator, and whoever your representative is, reach out to them. Tell them how every year or every 6 months your rates are going up, you're getting no relief, how you're paying more for insurance a lot of times than your car payment, and tell them that you're sick and tired of it. If enough people do that, we'll start to see more bills introduced. We saw one bill that was introduced that was recently passed that was going to put a limit on like the lawsuits or whatever, and the insurance commissioner said it should trickle down to consumers and they should save like 2 to 3%. That's not enough. That's not enough. So we really need to put the pressure and keep our feet on the necks of our state senators and our representatives, whoever our new governor is going to be, and then our next insurance commissioner who's going to be responsible for holding these insurance companies accountable, who's going to be responsible for approving or denying these rate increases. So you really want to get somebody in there that knows what they're doing and somebody that cares more about the people versus the profits.
What made you think about it again?
Well, I mean, hey, 2026 is right around the corner, and you hear it here first. There's a distinct possibility. There's a distinct possibility that I may go to finish what I started. I'll say that here.
I'll be with you.
Thank you. Thank you. But I say, policy reviews, to recap everything, policy reviews are very important. So talk to your agent, have those policies reviewed, start learning all the different elements, pull your policy out. Hey, they have Chat GPT now. If your agent isn't available, throw it in there. Say, hey, break down my policy in the terms I can understand. get that declarations page. The declarations page is usually a summary of your coverages, and that's whatever kind of policy you have. Upload that bad boy into Chat GPT and ask it to break it down for you. And that way, you'll really start understanding that terminology. You'll know what you get, and let's make sure you're adequately covered.
That's awesome. I just thought of one more little thing.
Okay. Hey, you
I'm
got me here. Whatever you need.
I'm watching time. I know we passed 10. But look, all of this stuff that's calling themselves insurance. I just went through with Priceline. I looked up the hotel. So I called the number and I'm thinking I'm talking to the hotel. So it's Priceline. And they gave
Mhm.
me a price for the hotel room because I travel nursing sometimes.
Yes.
So I booked it, but then my assignment, I didn't get all my information in on time, all my credentials in on time. So my assignment got put off.
Hmm.
So I called and canceled. So they said, "Oh, you have insurance." I fought like the dickens to get my money.
Right.
Look, could I have, and it's everything like when you're airline, I'm telling you, everything is insurance. Buy flight insurance and all of
Yes.
this stuff. You know what I'm saying? There's insurance on everything.
Yes.
Is those people that's calling themselves insurance real insurance? And are they governed under the insurance commissioner?
Well, I'm not sure which ones you ran across, but there are some reputable traveling insurance companies. So always like look at
Not
that fine
Priceline.
print. Yeah, so I have to see which one they use, but there's one major company called Allianz, Allianz, and you can buy it through whatever booking site you use, or you can go ahead and purchase separately. So when in doubt, if you think it's going to be like a little fee, ahead and get a standalone policy directly from the travel insurance company. And then that way you're going to have a lot less red tape and a lot less fighting to do with these places like these price lines and stuff. So Allianz is one that I've used, for my travels. I recently kind of got the travel bug. And so I make sure that I use like the Allianz. I don't sell travel insurance, so this isn't a pitch for me, but it is something good and it's easy if you do have to cancel and if it's something that's covered. But even with that, you got to make sure that you read what's covered and what's excluded. But I would say a lot of times getting a standalone policy is the best. Now, companies, if you go directly through the airlines like Delta, I know they already use Allianz. Delta is really good with that. Some of these hotels, if you book directly, but these third party companies like these Pricelines, these hotels.com, I highly recommend getting a standalone uh, travel insurance policy with that.
Thank you so much. We
You're welcome.
appreciate this. We thank you for the information. If anybody need insurance or information, would you like to give out your information for
Yes,
our guests speaking?
absolutely. So on all social media platforms, I am the Raphael Baker, TheRaphaelBaker. If you want to go to my company's website, it is kingofinsurance.net. That's king, because I'm the king of insurance, kingofinsurance.net. And I look forward to connecting. Reach out, say hi. If you have some questions about your policy, I'm very approachable. And again, I love what I do. So reach out, talk to me, tell me how you think this was, show some love. But I really appreciate this.
I do too. I'm so grateful because it's one thing, like I said, that's required in so many areas of our lives, but yet we still don't understand.
Yes.
And we can have all these ideas of what we think, but what we think has nothing to do with what we really have in our hand. And avoiding insurance until a better time could be a really bad thing. So even if you think it's not time, I can't afford it, I would suggest that you call And I promise you, I don't think there's nobody better you can talk to about your insurance needs. So
Thank
for you, for your family, for yourself, if you have any questions, any doubt, just give him a call.
Thank
Look, everybody can't call on one day now, okay? But give him. That's good. And let me tell you, social media, you're gonna get an answer, okay?
Oh yeah.
Social media, you're gonna get an answer. Sigrid said, very informative information. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
It
Thank
was
you.
this, but our community needed this so much, and I just want to say thank you. And maybe you could come back and talk to us about getting involved and why it's
Listen,
important to be involved in those conversations.
I will come back and talk to you about anything you want to talk about. Even though insurance is my lane, we can talk about whatever. So I would love to come back and talk with you and your
Yeah,
audience.
we
You
have
have
to
been
talk about
amazing.
why it's important
Yes.
to get involved.
Yes.
Look, to get involved is important to your insurance.
Mhm.
You know, you never connected politics and insurance before tonight. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. But we're gonna work together on that health insurance.
Yeah.
We're gonna do that. I'm
We are.
gonna start on that tomorrow.
Yes, I'm so serious about that, and thank you for bringing that up because that's important. So yeah, we're gonna get in these trenches.
Yeah, we got to help ourselves out because
Yes.
Barbara said information is important, and I'm thinking when prices go way up. When
Mhm.
prices go up, your little bit of money don't go up like that. You know,
Right.
how do we work in times of inflation? Yeah,
Right.
how do we work around that? So if that's your issue,
Right.
give Raphael a call because it's
Yes.
so important for us to cover ourselves because we don't know what our tomorrow is going to bring.
Right.
But thank you all for coming, and thank you for being here with us. And we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you. Thank you so much.